gap during a speech yesterday. Take a listen to this.
Together, we are expanding access to transportation. Seems like maybe it's a small issue, it's a big issue. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
We all watched the television coverage of just yesterday. That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened. But just limited to what we have seen.
It's not funny. It's tragic. And it only got worse.
I am here, standing here on the northern flank, on the eastern flank, talking about what we have in terms of the eastern flank and our NATO allies, and what is at stake at this very moment. What is at stake this very moment are some of the guiding principles around the NATO alliance.
Vice President Kamala Harris made an unscheduled trip to Highland Park yesterday. She spoke to residents there following the mass shooting July the 4th. She took it, shall we say, seriously? Roll tape.
We'll deal with what we need to deal with in terms of also as we move forward, all agreeing that we got to be smarter as a country in terms of who has access to what, and in particular assault weapons. And we got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
We were all doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
We don't know. We don't know. That was Vice President Kamala Harris on the road in Louisiana. She is facing backlash this morning after that rambling speech, the word salad, referencing the significance of the passage of time 4 times in about 30 seconds. It comes as the vice president's national security advisor steps down, her 10th high-profile staffer to leave since June. I'm with Ryan Payne and Joe Concha this morning. Joe, what do you think she's trying to say there?
Well, you know, it sounds a lot like her explanation around when she was asked about COVID testing when there was no testing back in December. And I actually have this hanging in my nice little home studio here, Maria, a quote from her at the time. It is time for us to do what we have been doing. And that time is every day. She also said about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong, and it goes against everything we stand for.
Welcome back. Vice President Kamala Harris is getting mocked and criticized yet again for serving up another word salad. This time during an appearance with Jamaica's Prime Minister at the White House. It's just the latest instance of the vice president blurting out confusing or totally nonsensical responses.
We will assist Jamaica in COVID recovery by assisting in terms of the recovery efforts in Jamaica that have been essential to, I believe, what is necessary to strengthen not only the issue of public health, but also the economy. Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time. We are talking about the real possibility of war in Europe. So our position is for us very clear, which is as a leader, which we have been, bringing together the allies, working together around our collective and unified position. This was a productive trip in terms of the extensive bilateral meetings that we had that were in furtherance of the ongoing collaboration and partnership with our allies. It was important in that, as you all know, this is a moment that is very dynamic, if not every hour, certainly every day. There seem to be new moments of interest and also of intelligence. And so we have affirmed, however, all of that being said, through these last couple of days, that this alliance is strong.
at some point. You know, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
So Vice President Kamala Harris is also weighing in on gas prices. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
What we need to do domestically, what we need to do to bring down the cost of gas. Well, right? Right?
I seen a meme the other day that said me Googling online how to make gas at home. Okay?
Ooh, don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that.
Hilarious.
Okay. You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
Yeah. Well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
let's talk about packing.
You once
Come
again
on.
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
The
now.
American people deserve a straight answer.
And is that a socialist or progressive perspective?
No.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week.
You landed haymakers on Joe Biden. How do you go from being such a passionate opponent?
It was a debate.
Ron Gold has said that he is for the legalization of marijuana recreationally. Your thoughts on that?
That he is entitled to his opinion.
So if it was legalized all throughout the country and medicinal, would you do it?
Listen,
again?
I think that it gives a lot of people joy, and we need more joy.
What it actually did was demonstrate the utter ineptitude of the vice president.
Okay, so this time. Szanowna pani redaktor.
You might be wondering what prompted that mad cackling during such a serious press conference. Was there perhaps a moment of lightness during such a dark time? Well, no. That embarrassing performance was prompted by a serious question about the unfolding refugee crisis.
Is the United States willing to make a specific allocation for Ukrainian refugees? And for President Duda, I wanted to know if you think, and if you asked the United States to specifically accept more refugees.
Okay. A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Okay, I can first.
To the cackling nincompoop who is a heartbeat away from the presidency.
We did it, Joe.
Kamala Harris made history as the first woman, first Black American, and first Asian American to become vice president. In some ways, the fanfare around her being sworn in overshadowed Joe Biden taking the oath of office. But after less than a year in the post, she is a historically unpopular VP. Where once she was always in the frame during Joe Biden's major addresses, she has been notably absent from the president's side of late. Her diminished public presence has even prompted one US columnist to nickname her the incredible disappearing vice president. Kamala Harris has an approval rating of 28%, down from 50% when she first took office. It appears to make her the least popular vice president at this stage of an administration in at least 50 years. For context, Mike Pence's approval ratings were above 40% at the same stage of Donald Trump's administration. So why is she seen to be doing so badly? Well, there's a feeling she's not delivered on the two biggest tasks that Joe Biden has entrusted her with. First, tackling the root causes of the migrant crisis. Despite a record spike of people coming into the US, she did not go to visit Mexico and Guatemala until June, 6 months after starting the job. During an interview, she gave an incredibly tone-deaf response when asked why she had so far declined to see the conditions on the border firsthand.
This whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
And her public comments once she was finally in Central America surprised many. She had previously called for a more compassionate approach to those arriving at the southern border, but said this:
To folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border.
The second key task she's been given, and one critical to Democrats' electoral hopes, is voting rights. In June, the Senate killed a House-passed voting rights bill. The Democrats lacked the 60 votes to overcome a Republican filibuster. Harris's aides claim she is working hard behind the scenes to deliver the White House's agenda, but without any tangible actions for the public to cling to. Some have questioned how much impact she is having on the issue. She has made very few forays to Capitol Hill to build Republican support for voting legislation. And this highlights another issue for the vice president. Unlike Biden, who spent decades in the Senate, reaching across the aisle as a senator, Harris only spent a few years in the Senate while busy running for president. It's why some wonder whether she has the experience or the political acumen to secure bipartisan support for crucial legislation. Harris has also faced an exodus of senior staff amid reports of dysfunction within her office. The most recent high-profile departure is Simone Sanders, the vice president's spokesperson and her most prominent public defender. To help her course correct, Harris has since brought in crisis communications veterans to help her define her role and rebrand her public image. As well as her lack of experience in Washington, Harris has come under fire for her lack of visibility. She was a pillar during Biden's early televised speeches, but has often been missing from his side in recent months. That change has led to speculation about their relationship behind closed doors. Biden and Harris do not have a long political or personal history. In fact, the vice president once blindsided Biden when they were competing for the Democratic nomination, attacking his position on racial integration programs during a high-profile debate.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
White House aides have privately suggested that Harris has brought some of the criticism upon herself, with clumsy responses during interviews. It has made it difficult, they say, for Biden to jump to her defense when he faces his own political crises. Others argue that the dip in her approval ratings are the natural consequence of the weight of expectation that engulfed her historic nomination. After all, taking on the job of being number two can automatically diminish your profile. The polling seems damning, but is all the criticism fair? The White House has blamed sexism and racism for the attacks against Harris.
I do think there has been some attacks that are beyond because of her identity.
Despite the president's spokeswoman issuing a public defense, members of Harris's inner circle have also blamed White House aides for her troubles. They argue she is being sidelined rather than positioned effectively by Biden, who knows the challenges of being number two better than anyone. They have also been keen to highlight her accomplishments, which they say are not always appreciated by a Washington press corps who compare her against her white male predecessors. They point in particular to her efforts to encourage African Americans to get vaccinated against COVID, an achievement they believe has been under-recognised. And despite all the criticism, some say her low profile could be a deliberate way to strike a delicate balance. Associating herself too closely with the struggling president could harm her own future plans. But on the other hand, any hint of further political ambition right now could damage her standing with the Biden administration. Has the public lost faith in Kamala Harris?
She's not doing anything that she's supposed to, that she's not supporting the United States, the people, or the president for that matter.
Or is this a brief blip under the crushing weight of expectation around her?
She's worked her way up to get to where she is, and give her a chance to do her job.
For now, at least, it seems she is no longer Joe Biden's heir apparent. A number of Democrats seem prepared to challenge her for the nomination should Biden not seek re-election in 2024. But with 3 years left to reverse course, it is too early to count Harris out.
Politics means compromise, sometimes to your roots. But has the first female vice president in U.S. history overshot? This is the shady side of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris's journey to political prominence initially began after she graduated from the University of California's Hastings College of Law with a JD in 1989. She famously attended Howard University for her undergrad degree. The future vice president took her first job as a deputy district attorney in Oakland, California in 1990, serving until 1998. But Harris's career may have started in earnest when in 1994 she met the powerful California politician and San Francisco mayor Willie Brown, who was, quote, a notorious womanizer, according to the San Francisco Weekly. Harris was 29, Brown 60, and married, although according to the debunking website Snopes, he had been estranged from his wife for more than a decade. He was powerful in Bay Area politics, and the two began dating. Brown was also allegedly corrupt, his office under investigation by the FBI, and Harris eventually dumped her aging lover. Still, when she ran for district attorney in 2003, Brown put his weight behind her anyway. Harris won, but according to Politico, critics, including her opponents, were bemoaning cronyism at City Hall. Once in office, Harris threw Brown under the bus. The ambitious young politician declared her benefactor all but dead, saying, "His career is over. I will be alive and kicking for the next 40 years. I do not owe him a thing." Politico branded Harris as, quote, ruthless. Harris has been spinning a seemingly apocryphal childhood yarn for years that goes something like this. When she was a toddler in Oakland, California, she was separated from her parents at a march. Young Kamala was found, but fussing, and according to Harris's retelling in an interview with Elle, her mother asked her, "Baby, what do you want? What do you need?" And I just looked at her and I said, "Freedom." Harris told versions of this tale in her 2010 book Smart on Crime, as well as her 2019 book The Truths We Hold: An American Journey, according to the New York Post. She giggled her way through the anecdote on late-night TV with Jimmy Fallon as well.
And she said, "Kamala, what do you want?" And I said, "Freedom."
However, observers have pointed out a remarkable similarity to a story that Martin Luther King Jr. told Playboy during the Civil Rights era. In 1965, King recounted the story to Playboy, saying, "I will never forget a moment in Birmingham when a white policeman accosted a little Negro girl, 7 or 8 years old, who was walking in a demonstration with her mother. 'What do you want?' the policeman asked her gruffly, and the little girl looked at him straight in the eye and answered, 'Feed 'em.'" While the similarities in the stories can't be ignored, Snopes remains undecided on whether it's outright plagiarism, stating that Harris claims to have no direct memory of the incident, but rather has simply repeated a story told to her by her mother. Politicians love to pretend to be cooler than they are. Kamala Harris's Democratic successors did it too. Bill Clinton made his first big splash on the national scene in a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses, blowing out a saxophone solo to Heartbreak Hotel on the Arsenio Hall show in 1992. But Clinton also claimed that while he'd tried marijuana, he didn't inhale. During Harris's run for executive privilege in 2019, the public's view of this stinky little weed had changed dramatically, and the then aspiring POTUS was endorsing legalization. Speaking on The Breakfast Club amid fits of laughter, she said,
"It was a long time ago, but yes.
I know you have to go. They say you have to go. I just
broke loose."
Harris claimed her experimentation was in college, and when one of the interviewers asked her who she listened to while high, she laughed again.
Definitely Snoop, Tupac, for sure.
Well, not for sure. According to Newsweek, critics quickly pointed out that Harris graduated from Howard University in 1986, 5 years before either rapper released a debut album. Her defenders claimed Harris was just confused by crosstalk and was actually answering a more general question about artists she likes. Harris's opponent in the Democratic primaries, Tulsi Gabbard, had a different and perhaps more important grievance with the segment, saying that Harris jailed over 1,500 people for marijuana violations and then laughed when asked if she ever smoked. During Harris's failed bid for the Democratic nomination in 2019, in which her much-hyped campaign collapsed before the first caucus, she offered up an ambitious plan to, quote, overhaul the criminal justice system, according to Politico. Her sweeping plan, the article said, called to end federal mandatory minimum prison sentences, do away with both the death penalty and solitary confinement, and to phase out for-profit prisons and cash bail. But Harris's top-of-the-ticket campaign may have imploded, in part due to her own previous stances on criminal criminal justice. According to The Week, Harris, quote, sometimes embraced her tough-on-crime record, but perhaps in light of the ascendant Black Lives Matter movement and the push to reallocate resources from the police to other social services, the former top cop, quote, seemed ashamed of her own tough record as DA and Attorney General. In one interview on ABC News in 2019, she said she protected the, quote, most vulnerable as a prosecutor.
A large part of my career as a courtroom prosecutor was handling cases that affected crimes against women and children.
Part of the criminal justice system Harris and activists now want changed is one that imprisons minorities at a disproportionate rate for minor drug offenses, according to a report by Human Rights Watch. But according to Mercury News, as Attorney General of California, Harris oversaw 1,900 convictions related to marijuana. She also, quote, fought to keep people in prison even after they were proved innocent, according to Vox, and further defended California's death penalty, all while refusing to look into, quote, certain police shootings. Her work as a prosecutor still haunts Harris politically, according to the Los Angeles Times. After all, no one put her in prison for smoking a joint. In 1998, a fight broke out in a parking lot in California's San Fernando Valley. Cops thought they saw a man, Daniel Larson, ditch a knife under a car. Larson protested his innocence, but also had 2 serious prior felony convictions, and under California's harsh 3 strikes policy, was sentenced to 28 years to life, according to The Atlantic. The Innocence Project eventually took up Larson's case. Turns out, Larson's trial lawyer bungled it badly. The lawyer's most egregious error was that he never had the knife processed for fingerprints. Sworn testimony from a retired cop also later showed Larson never had the knife, another man did. Larson's attorney was later disbarred for his incompetence, and a judge ordered the state to retry Larson or let him go. Harris could have done just that. Instead, her office fought to keep Larson locked up on technical grounds because he hadn't filed his petition quickly enough. Larson spent 2 more years in prison battling Harris's office. Harris's team eventually lost its bid in appeals court to keep this innocent man behind bars, but that didn't stop her from blocking all financial compensation due to Larson for the wrongful conviction. In 2019, Larson, who spent over a decade in prison for a crime he didn't commit, never saw a dime, and, quote, now lives in a small garage and relies on welfare payments. Speaking of innocence, imagine being a poor family struggling with bills and truant kids in the tougher corners of sunny but expensive California. Then imagine Attorney General Kamala Harris tossing you in jail on top of it. That happened. Then she lied about doing it. In a 2010 speech, Harris talked about prosecuting parents for truancy.
And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime.
She doubled down in 2011 during her inaugural address as California DA, saying, "So we are putting parents on notice. If you fail in your responsibility to your kids, we are going to work to make sure you face the full force and consequences of the law." Harris admits she personally prosecuted 20 families under this policy, according to the Washington Post, but has repeatedly denied anyone went to jail. But that's not exactly true. While no one in San Francisco went to jail for their child's truancy while Harris was district attorney, she pushed for her anti-truancy policy to go statewide, which it did in 2011. The law called for up to a $2,000 fine and a year in prison for parents of kids who missed more than 10% of school days with no excuse. Dozens of families were charged under this law, and though records aren't thorough, at least 7 parents went to jail under Harris's initiative. Her, quote, careful claims to the contrary were given 2 Pinocchios by the Washington Post. There is a deviously effective technique in the debate world called the Gish Gallop. It's when you spew so many falsehoods in such rapid succession that your interlocutor is put in the difficult position of either rebutting you endlessly or actually getting to their point. In Kamala Harris's 2020 vice presidential debate with Mike Pence, a question came on the topic of delaying Supreme Court justice nominations until after an election. Democrats favored this at the time, so Harris invented a, quote, unsubstantiated reasoning, according to factcheck.org, and ironically attributed it to Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln faced a similar nomination close to his own election, claimed Harris, adding, "But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States." Historians told the outlet that there's speculation to Lincoln's motive, but that probably wasn't it, and there is no record of Lincoln saying what Harris described. Harris, it seems, sometimes has a complicated relationship with the truth.
I'll just end by saying Kamala Harris is proof of what can happen when you disregard meritocracy and embrace identity politics. Kamala is what happens when you choose people for key roles not according to their ability, experience, or acumen, but according to their gender or their skin colour. Good luck, America.